The day of silence. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was alive with sound. Voices of 100 species rose and clashed like waves on a stormy sea. Tall insectoids clicked their mandibles, feathered diplomats fluffed their wings in agitation, and the reptilian delegates pounded the stone tables with scaled fists. Yet in the middle of this chaos, one name was spoken again and again. Earth. Where are the humans? One delegate demanded, his voice echoing through the tall marble pillars. They have not sent a representative in months. No ships arrive. No messages are answered. The others laughed. A fleshy, round-bodied creature with glowing eyes leaned back in his chair and sneered. Humans were always unpredictable. Perhaps they finally destroyed themselves. Their passion burns too hot for reason. A sharp hiss of amusement spread across the chamber. For years the council had tolerated humanity, though many saw them as dangerous outsiders, too emotional, too bold, too reckless. Humans were useful in wars, creative in science, and fierce in alliances. But they were also inconvenient. They broke traditions, questioned authority, and refused to kneel before older powers. Now, silence filled the void where their voices once stood. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a mistake. Communications could fail, starships could be delayed, but weeks stretched into months and still, not a single signal from Earth. No freighters, no diplomats, no soldiers, not even the smallest scout ship. It was as if the entire species had simply vanished overnight. A tall, crystalline delegate rose, his body shimmering with cold light. This cannot be ignored. The Terrans were bound to this council by treaty. Their silence breaks the law. They were always troublesome, another replied with a dismissive wave. Let them fade. The galaxy is quieter without their endless noise. But not everyone agreed. A soft-voiced representative from a smaller, weaker species leaned forward, nervously. You do not understand. It was the humans who protected us from the raiders in the outer belts. Without them, her voice was cut off by booming laughter. The council chamber filled with arrogance and scorn. Protected? They only sought to make themselves look like heroes. A reptilian lord barked. Do not be fooled. Humanity was nothing but chaos wrapped in flesh. Perhaps it is better they are gone. Still, unease lingered. Somewhere deep inside, the council members knew the truth. The humans had not simply disappeared. No plague had been reported. No civil war broadcast. No wreckage found in space. Instead, Earth had gone dark deliberately. Not a cry for help, not a word of warning, just silence. And silence was far more terrifying than any open threat. Rumors began to spread beyond the chamber. Merchant captains whispered in starports that human colonies were abandoned overnight. Outposts once busy with trade stood deserted, lights cold, machines powered down. A freighter crew swore they had seen Earth itself. Dark skies, cities emptied, starports locked tight as if waiting for something. Why would they leave without a word? Someone asked. The answer never came. The chamber grew restless. The laughter faded, replaced with cautious murmurs. Finally, the Speaker of the Council, a towering figure draped in golden robes, lifted his staff for silence. The voices stilled. His long eyes scanned the gathering, his tone sharp and unyielding. If humanity has chosen to abandon the council, then so be it. We will not waste time chasing ghosts. Their arrogance will be their downfall. We remain the true rulers of this galaxy. The staff struck the floor, and the session was ended. But even as the chamber emptied, shadows of doubt clung to the walls. Delegates whispered to one another in secret. Some wondered if the humans had found something, an ancient power, a hidden weapon, or a secret path to the stars. Others feared they had retreated only to prepare for something greater. None dared to say it aloud, but the thought grew stronger each day. The humans had not left in weakness. They had left in silence, and silence was only the beginning. The council's arrogance, the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into long, uneasy months. Still, Not a single signal came from Earth. The galaxy moved forward, but the silence remained like a shadow that stretched across the stars. Inside the council chamber, however, arrogance ruled. "We waste too much time on this," snapped a delegate whose body shimmered with molten metal veins. "If the humans wish to sulk in silence, let them. The council does not bend to deserters." The others agreed loudly. Great claws pounded on marble, wings beat the air, voices filled with laughter. To them, humanity's absence was an insult, but also a convenience. With no human voices in the chamber, no one interrupted the council's ancient traditions. No one mocked their endless debates. No one demanded progress over politics. "See?" hissed a reptilian lord, his fangs flashing under the bright lights. The humans thought themselves clever, but they were children among giants. Now they are gone, and the galaxy is better for it. But outside the chamber, the galaxy told another story. Trade routes began to crumble. Human freighters once carried medicine, food, and technology across distant sectors. Now colonies begged for supplies that never arrived. Starports that once buzzed with Terran engineers fell quiet, their machines rusting in silence. Smaller species who had relied on human protection now faced threats from raiders and warlords. Still, the council did nothing. They should have prepared better. A feathered aristocrat scoffed when news of border raids reached the chamber. If their safety depended on humans, they were already weak. But not everyone laughed. Among the delegates sat those who had fought beside humans, who had seen their strange mixture of courage and madness. They remembered soldiers who refused to abandon allies, scientists who built wonders out of scraps, and explorers who ventured into the dark where no one else dared. Those delegates sat in silence now, too afraid to speak, too aware of the ridicule that would follow. One evening, after another session of mockery and denial, a small group of them met in secret. They gathered in a dimly lit hall carved from obsidian, away from the echoes of arrogance. "They are not gone," whispered a frail amphibian diplomat, his eyes wide with fear. "I have spoken with traders who swear they saw human colonies, emptied as if by plan, not accident." "Yes," agreed another, her voice trembling. "My own fleets patrolled near Sol. Earth's skies were clear, but the orbital stations were sealed, not destroyed." Sealed. The room grew cold. Sealed. As if the humans had closed a door and locked it behind them. "What are they planning?" someone asked. No one answered. Meanwhile, in the chamber above, the council celebrated their own wisdom. They declared new laws, reshaped treaties, and distributed human trade routes among themselves. Every species tried to claim a piece of what humanity left behind, yet the pieces never fit. Human technology resisted imitation. Machines shut down without human hands to guide them. Colonies abandoned by humans seemed cursed, their power grids failing, their starports refusing to respond. Even the simplest Terran devices were stubborn, as if they obeyed no master but their creators. Frustration turned to anger. "See what happens when children play with tools they cannot control?" a delegate spat, holding up a shattered human engine core. "They leave us with broken toys." The chamber roared with cruel laughter. But beneath their arrogance, fear crept in. Quietly, ships began to vanish. Patrols sent near the abandoned Terran colonies failed to return. Fleets dispatched to claim human outposts reported strange malfunctions before going silent forever. At first, the council blamed pirates. Then they accused each other, but whispers spread. Whispers that made even the proudest lords grow uneasy. The humans had not left nothing behind. They had left shadows. Ghostly ships glimpsed at the edge of scanners. Silent structures on abandoned worlds, pulsing with faint light as if waiting for something. Unfamiliar symbols carved into steel walls, warnings or promises, yet the council dismissed it all. "Fairy tales," the speaker thundered, slamming his staff. "Do not let superstition cloud our judgment. The humans are finished. Their silence proves their weakness. And the council," he lifted his head high, "remains eternal." The chamber roared its agreement, proud and blind. But outside, In the quiet dark between stars, something stirred, something humanity had left behind, hidden in silence, and silence was growing louder. Whispers of regret. The galaxy had begun to change. Where once human freighters crisscrossed the stars with steady rhythm, there were only empty lanes now. The silence stretched wider each day, and with it came shadows, raiders, smugglers, and warlords, eager to carve their own kingdoms from the ruins of abandoned trade routes. The smaller species were the first to suffer. Worlds once guarded by Terran fleets now trembled at the sight of pirate banners. Villages burned, outposts fell. Pleas for help flooded the council chamber, their voices desperate and afraid. But the council only argued. "This is no concern of ours," barked a reptilian delegate, slamming his clawed fist on the table. "The humans spoiled these weaklings. Let them stand on their own." "They cannot stand," whispered the representative of a bird-like species, his feathers drooping. "They were safe because of humanity. Now, they are prey." His words were drowned by laughter. The arrogance still ruled the chamber, but outside, whispers had begun to spread. Soft voices that grew louder with each disappearance. Each failed. Patrol, each star gone dark. The whispers said humanity had not left in weakness. They had left with purpose. In starports, merchants spoke of abandoned Terran colonies that looked untouched, as if people had simply walked away in the middle of their lives. Meals left on tables, lights still burning, homes perfectly clean, perfectly ready, as though the humans had been waiting for a signal, and then all at once obeyed it. Some claimed to see ships, colossal black silhouettes at the edge of systems, gliding silently through the void. Not pirate ships, not council ships, something different. They never fired, they never hailed. They only watched. And the survivors swore the ships were human. The council tried to bury these stories. They silenced traitors, mocked frightened delegates, and ridiculed the smaller species who spoke of ghost fleets. But fear has a way of slipping through cracks. And in the quiet hours, when the chamber was empty and the stars glowed cold, even the proudest lords wondered if they had made a mistake. One night, deep inside a hidden corridor of the council fortress, two delegates met in secret. "They have not abandoned us," whispered the first, a frail creature with pale, translucent skin. His eyes darted as if shadows might be listening. "They are waiting. I can feel it. Something vast is moving in silence." The second, a tall, crystalline being, gave a slow, heavy nod. "I served beside humans once. They were reckless, yes, but never careless. They do not vanish without reason. If they are gone, it is because they chose to be. Then what have they chosen?" Neither spoke after that. The silence between them was answer enough. Meanwhile, entire sectors slipped out of the council's control. Warlords grew bolder, sensing weakness. Alien species who once depended on Terran diplomacy now begged for help, only to be ignored. The council, too proud to admit its fear, claimed it still held power. But in truth, the galaxy had grown unstable, and all the while the whispers grew, whispers of regret. In taverns, in ports, in broken colonies, beings spoke of the time humans had stood for them. They remembered fleets that had arrived in the darkest hour, soldiers who fought without fear, engineers who rebuilt shattered worlds. They were flawed, one said, but they were never cowards. They argued, yes, another agreed, but when the danger came, they stood with us. Now, with humanity gone, many began to ask the same question. What if we pushed them away? What if they left because of us? The council pretended not to hear, but the truth could not be silenced. Even the speaker, cloaked in gold, found himself awake in the dark hours, staring at the star maps, wondering what he had failed to see. At the edges of the galaxy, strange phenomena grew more frequent. Fleets vanished without a trace. Entire stations were found floating cold, their crews gone as if erased by invisible hands. Symbols of unknown origin appeared etched into the walls. Some swore they were human letters, twisted into warnings. The council called them lies. But deep down they knew. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity had moved beyond them, and whatever they had become, whatever they were building in silence, It was not meant for the Council's eyes. The galaxy shivered under the weight of an absence. That felt too much like a presence. The whispers turned to fear, and the fear turned to regret. For the first time, the Council began to realize the truth. They had mocked the silence. They had laughed at the absence. But now, they felt it closing in around them. The regret was no longer a whisper. It was a shadow. The first signs, the Council's arrogance had begun to rot from within. In the chamber, they still raised their voices, still mocked the whispers, still spoke as if the galaxy was theirs to command. But beyond those tall marble walls, the stars told another story. The first sign came in the Cadres system. A Council patrol of 12 warships entered the abandoned human colony there. They expected ruins, empty streets, and machines left to rust. Instead, they found a city still alive with power. Lights glowed in windows. Towers pulsed with energy. Doors stood open, as if waiting. Yet not a single human walked those streets. The patrol commander sent scouts to investigate. They entered the silent homes and reported strange details. Food left on tables, clean beds, machines humming as if used only yesterday. It was as though the humans had stepped outside for a moment and would return at any second. Then the scouts began to vanish. One by one, their signals flickered and went dark. No screams, no signs of attack. Just silence. The last message sent back was a trembling whisper. They're still here. And then nothing. Hours later, when the Council sent reinforcements, they found no trace of the patrol. Not a single ship, not a single body. Only the city remained waiting in silence. The Council dismissed it as malfunction. Pirates, they claimed, or a reactor accident. But those who studied the records noticed something stranger. The UO missing fleet had transmitted ghostly shapes on their scanners in their final moments. Shapes too large, too precise to be random. Shapes that looked like warships, but they bore no Council markings. The second sign came in the Marith Belt. Miners reported colossal shadows moving between the asteroids, larger than anything they had ever seen. At first they thought it was just rock shifting, but when their machines stopped working, every engine, every tool, every comm device, fear took hold. The miners swore the shadows had turned, as if watching them. And then, one by one, their stations went dark. No distress calls reached the Council, only silence. The third sign was impossible to deny. A Council fleet of 20 ships engaged what they thought was a pirate armada. The battle lasted less than a minute. Black shapes drifted into range, silent, cold, and armed with weapons that shredded the fleet without firing more than a few bursts. Survivors swore the ships never spoke, never hailed, never even acknowledged their existence. They moved like ghosts, one broken captain whispered before collapsing, and when I saw them up close, they were human designs. But not the kind we knew, something more, something greater. The Council silenced him, declaring him unfit, his mind shattered by fear. But rumors spread faster than truth could be buried. Everywhere the galaxy spoke of the same thing. The humans had returned, but they had returned in silence, and the silence was worse than war. For war meant negotiation, messages, ultimatums, pride. Silence meant intent without explanation, presence without mercy. It meant that humanity no longer needed to speak. Inside the Council chamber, cracks appeared at last. No longer did every delegate laugh. Some sat quiet, their eyes dark with worry. Some avoided each other's gaze, ashamed of the words they had once spoken. At night, when the chamber was empty, the speaker himself stood at the great window and watched the stars. His reflection stared back, but in the black sky beyond he thought he saw movement, massive silhouettes drifting without sound, just out of reach. He closed his eyes, but the image remained. The whispers had grown into truths, the truths into signs, and the signs into fear. The galaxy no longer asked where humanity had gone, now it asked what they had become, and no one dared to speak the answer. The regret, the council chamber, once filled with endless noise, now stood in uneasy quiet. Delegates no longer laughed. Their voices had grown thin, their arguments hollow. Too many fleets had vanished. Too many colonies had fallen into silence. Too many ghostly shadows had appeared in the dark. Still, they tried to cling to their pride. "We are the council," shouted one insectoid lord, his mandibles clicking in fury. "We have ruled for centuries. We will not be cowed by phantoms." But his voice cracked at the edges. Even he felt the weight pressing down, the silence that was no longer absence but presence. The speaker rose, his golden robe heavy as he struck the floor with his staff. The chamber's echoes rang sharp and cold. "We will gather our strongest fleets. We will show these pretenders that the galaxy bows to us." But before the council could answer, the lights above them flickered. The chamber trembled. The great glass ceiling shifted from the starlit void into shadow. Delegates looked up, their eyes wide, their voices caught in their throats. Above the council world, ships had arrived. Not one, not a dozen, hundreds. Colossal vessels stretched across the sky, so vast they blotted out the stars. They were shaped with terrifying precision, human designs, yet transformed into something greater, darker, silent as the grave. No banners, no signals, no warning. They simply hovered there, waiting. The council panicked. Wings flared, claws scraped, voices shouted in a dozen tongues. Orders screamed through comms. Fleets scrambled from the planet's surface, racing into orbit to defend their homeworld. But none of the human ships moved. Not a single weapon fired. Not a single word was spoken. The Council's fleets launched volleys of plasma, beams of fire, weapons meant to crack moons apart. Yet every blast vanished against invisible barriers. And then, with one silent pulse of light, the human ships answered. Entire armadas collapsed in seconds. Ships broke apart without explosion, their metal peeling away like paper. Engines died. Silence devoured them. The Council watched in horror as their proudest fleets fell like dust into the void. Inside the chamber, no one spoke now. No one mocked. No one laughed. They could only stare at the giant shadows above, their reflections trembling in the black steel of human warships. And then, something worse than destruction happened. A signal came through. Not sound, not words, only silence transmitted across every channel, like an empty voice carried into their minds. Delegates clutched their heads, shivering as they felt it. Not violence, not rage, but something colder. Indifference. The humans had not come to beg. They had not come to negotiate. They had not come for revenge. They had come to show the Council how little it mattered. The chamber shook again as the largest ship drifted closer, its shadow swallowing the capital city. Its surface gleamed with alien stars, but carved into its hull were human words vast and unmistakable. "We remember." The Council froze. In those words lay judgment, sorrow, and something far heavier than hate. The speaker fell to his knees, his golden staff clattering to the floor. Around him, the delegates cowered in silence, their arrogance broken, their pride shattered. They had mocked the silence. They had laughed at the absence. They had dismissed the warnings. Now, they finally understood. Humanity had not left in weakness. Humanity had left to become something greater, something beyond the Council's reach. And they had returned not with words, not with war, but with silence so powerful it crushed entire civilizations. The galaxy would never forget that day. It was the day regret was born. The day the Council realized they had lost everything, long before the humans had even arrived. The day humanity began its new age, and the day the Council's rule ended in silence.